What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. We have a lot to talk about in this weekend update here. We're going to talk a little bit about what was driving the market going into last week, and then what we need to look for moving forward here as we're now past the FOMC meeting, the trade deadline, and also kind of in the middle of earnings season here. Now, as always, we're going to be covering some of your guys' favorite names here: Neo, Palantir, Sofi, and HIMS, covering the most relevant pieces of news, going over the short-term chart so that you guys have a good understanding of what to expect next, and also we're going to do a little bit of an earnings preview on Palantir and HIMS because those are going to be reporting earnings in the very near future. So guys, before we get into all of that information, if you guys do enjoy the information and analysis that I provide for you guys in these videos here, make sure you go down and hit that like button. It costs you nothing to do it, but it helps me out a whole lot, spreading this information out to as many people who actually want to learn. And again, if you're not subscribed yet, make sure you guys are, and turn on notifications so you're notified every time these videos do end up getting posted live. And as always, massive shout out to all of the members of my private trading and investing community, Less Trades, More Profits. I'm going to throw up some of the gain screenshots of some of the trades here that I've been able to hand out to everybody over the last 2 weeks. I mean, as you guys can see, you're not going to see these types of results anywhere else. The way that we operate in the market, guys, again, is why so many people hopping into the group are able to have so much more success in my group versus other groups here. Now, again, if you guys do want to hop in and get 50% off your first month, use code August with that link down below. Again, you get access to all the full-length educational course curriculum videos, the daily private live streams, the full watch list of stocks and cryptos that are about to explode before they do, the pre-market plans, the macro research reports, the single stock research reports. Again, we can't be beat over here. We're just going to keep calling out the absolute best trades in the market, and I'd love for you guys to be a part of it too. So without further ado, let's get into all of this information here. The first thing that was very interesting that came out on Friday was obviously this really significant revision in the payroll data. So non-farm payroll gains were sharply revised down. May's total dropped from 144,000 to 19,000, and June's from 147,000 to 14,000, a combined cut of 258,000 jobs. So what this effectively means is that in the prior data that we were looking at before, the jobs data was overstated by 258,000 jobs. Now, when you think about the Fed's dual mandate of maximum employment and price stability on that inflation side, well, the Fed was basically operating off of bad data. But if they were paying attention like we were on all the daily live streams that I do with you guys here, the ADP data was actually suggesting that non-farm payrolls were wildly overstating a lot of these job gains because these private payrolls were coming in a lot lower. Now, one of the reasons for that is that the ADP report actually uses social security numbers and actual hard data to get and generate the reports that they are sending out to the public, and non-farm payrolls is effectively just a survey of business owners. So that ADP data is going to be a lot more accurate here, and is one of the reasons why we can see these large discrepancies between what the actual job numbers were and what they were reported initially. Now, in addition to this, when we saw the FOMC meeting this week, we did see two dissents from, I believe, Waller and Bowman, and we are also seeing some other FOMC members coming out and saying that they are willing to have an open mind going into the September FOMC meeting, just like we were outlining kind of in that FOMC stream here. We can see Fed Williams, labor market still solid in my view, will go into September meeting with an open mind and sees tailwinds in economic growth developing in 2026 here. So rate cut expectations are moving around. And we also are receiving some, interesting statements from Donald Trump. Some of the statements there, again, we're not going to get political in this video, but he really can't have it both ways. If the jobs numbers were overstated to the upside and the economy was actually doing worse, or the labor market was actually doing worse than expected, then the economy isn't actually doing as well, and he has his argument for rate cuts. But if this revision to the downside was a lie or a scam, then the economy is really in a good spot, and you don't have that strong of an argument for rate cuts. So you can't really have it both ways there. And in addition, again, we saw a lot of volatility coming into the end of the week here. We're looking at S&P 500 futures. We were down very, very, very significantly. We wiped out most of July's gains, really in the last day of July here and the first day of August. And what this did was it also started to move the CNN Fear and Greed Index back to neutral. When we take a look at this timeline here, going over over kind of the beginning of July, we saw these numbers and these data points at this extreme greed area, and we are now starting to move back to a more neutral spot. And I would say that is very, very healthy for this market in the short and medium term here. We did need to get a little bit of a pullback. Again, going back to this chart here, we've basically just been going vertical since those lows that we saw in April, and a little bit of a pullback potentially back to those prior all-time highs, in my view, would be a positive development for markets, kind of adding fuel to this overall fire for potential further price movement to the upside across the board. Now let's get into some of these individual names here, because we've seen a lot of very interesting action in some of your guys' favorite stocks here. First one that we're going to talk a little bit about is NIO. So again, we have seen a very, very positive reaction from the market as it relates to the rollout of this new Onvo L90. Now, the deliveries are going to be the most important part here. But again, for those of you guys that are in LTMP, this chart setup that we're looking at right here is very, very, very bullish in the short term. Now, again, that doesn't mean that we are going to see a rocket back up to this 550 area or maybe even that $6 area, but this chart is setting up for that potential move to the upside if the overall market conditions are going to hold up and NIO can continue receiving positive news. Now, again, we do have some other things coming in the pipeline for NIO as well. NIO to unveil the new ES8 later this month. Official launch date set for NIO Day 2025. Again, NIO will hold a product and technology event for this third generation ES8 in late August with display vehicles available at stores at that time. Now, again, Onvo and Firefly, in my opinion, are going to be the most important parts of NIO's success and the main driving factor of their success moving forward, because they're able to target the mass market and get their battery swapping technology out to more and more people. Now, as it relates to Onvo here, NIO Onvo began L90 deliveries. Test drive cars increased to 1,000. Again, we are seeing some very, very positive reactions from not only the equity market, but also just everyday people going in and being very excited about purchasing these new Onvo L90. So seeing the data on what those are actually going to be able to generate for NIO moving forward is potentially another further positive driving catalyst for NIO moving forward. Now, as I always say with NIO when we talk about this one, it is always going to come down to whether or not they're actually able to deliver on their quote-unquote promises that they have made to shareholders over really the last year here. There's been a lot of over-promising and under-delivering. Again, you never want to get married to any of these names. I think a lot of you guys that are watching these videos are trying to kind of hit a lottery ticket on this one name. And while NIO, if they are able to deliver on some of these promises, are going to get a nice re-rating in the market and trade a lot higher. Again, you want to make sure that you are operating in the market in reality versus kind of having these thoughts of hope out there every single time. So I just want to make sure everybody's expectations are in check. So moving on to HIMS here, again, we are going to be receiving earnings on HIMS on Monday here. We are at a very, very interesting spot in the chart. I mean, I've given you guys two really, really solid spots for entries over the last few months here. The first one was around 30 to 31, and then the other one here that we outlined actually just over the last couple of weeks was at this around 53.25 breakout area, which again played out very, very nicely for everybody that was paying attention not only to the YouTube videos here, but also the live streams and those of you guys that are in the LTMP group. So kind of taking a look at some of the estimates over here for HIMS earnings, the company is expected to post quarterly earnings of 18 cents per share in its upcoming report, which represents a year-over-year change of a 200% increase, which is absolutely massive. Revenues are expected to be $551.84 million, up 74.8% from the year ago quarter. So again, as we can see, HIMS is expected to continue growing at a very, very rapid rate. And if they are able to beat some of these expectations, they're probably going to trade higher in the market, obviously. But at the end of the day, we always have to make sure that we are operating in the market with a little bit of caution when we get around these earnings, because again, anything can happen. But obviously, this name is growing very, very, very fast here. We are seeing a lot of very solid growth, and I think that's going to continue, and HIMS is going to be a very, very large player in the healthcare space moving forward. Now, I do want to talk briefly about Sofi before we get into Palantir here. I know a lot of you guys are looking at this chart here, thinking about a good spot to buy. And again, like I say all the time, there is a time and a place for everything. I gave out Sofi at $6.55 to the private community last July. And I also recently gave you guys this weekly breakout at 1360. Right now, what I would say is SoFi, you really want to kind of leave it be in the short term. This chart is kind of one that I would like to say is broken. You see a big gap on earnings, a gap down off the offering announcement. You see a nice gap to the upside, another gap down. There is a lot of volatility in this name right now. And in order to get a good understanding of what the stock wants to do next, well, we obviously need to see this one settle in after their earnings and kind of go over exactly what the market wants to do next. We have to think, okay, are we going to see a little bit more volatility out of the broad market here? Are we going to see more craziness coming with these tariffs? Are we going to see some more interesting developments with what Trump is doing, putting nuclear submarines near Russia here? Those are things that we obviously have to be aware of, even though, again, SoFi is going to continue to perform well in pretty much any environment here. We also have to be aware of those big macro factors that are going to be affecting the broad market. Now, the last name that I want to talk about with you guys in this video is probably retail's favorite name here, and that is Palantir. So again, we obviously saw a little bit of volatility on Friday with the market moving all over the place, but overall, this medium-term uptrend is still remaining fully intact as we head into earnings on Monday. Now, Palantir, like I've said before, this is not one that you really want to go out, in my opinion, and buy in the open market right now, but it's definitely not one that you want to go out in short. This is one that I gave out to everybody in the teens here, so congratulations to everybody that's been in this one for a while. And Palantir, even though they have this and are commanding this crazy valuation out of the market, they're still doing everything that they need to do to grow their revenue significantly on the commercial side and on the government side. And just this week too, Palantir just received a $10 billion US Army pact to transition existing contracts. And when we come over here and take a look at some of the expectations, specifically Citigroup here, we are constructive on fundamentals into Q2 results. We expect a 2 to 3 point beat on revenue with upside to both government and commercial revenue consensus estimates. While the acceleration in government has been impressive, all right, let's get this ad out of here really quickly. Let's see. Well, the acceleration in government has been impressive. Second half growth has been tougher has a tougher compare. So, in general, guys, when we are going into these big earnings events, this is a big trend that we typically see with retail investors. They typically think that around these large events, that these are the times to take action in the market. In reality, the exact opposite is the case. What these earnings events are actually doing are giving you additional information on the thesis that you already have. You don't want to be gambling into these events and really taking on more additional risks than you actually need to. You want to be thesis driven in the market and make sure that you are using the information that you are receiving in order to kind of come to an understanding of, is the thesis still intact, or are things starting to change with the overall thesis that you have on any one of these individual names. So guys, that is going to wrap up this video here. If you guys did enjoy the information and analysis that I provided for you guys in this one, make sure you go down and hit that like button. It costs you nothing to do it, but it helps me out a whole lot in spreading this information out to as many people who actually want to learn. And again, if you're not subscribed yet, make sure you guys are, and turn on notifications so you're notified every time these videos go live. But until next time, guys, have a great rest of your weekend. Peace.